Good morning, Jimmy. How are you?
Jeremy, I am doing wonderful. How are you?
Good. Again, glad to be back here between two fiduciaries. Today we're talking about artificial intelligence.
Yep.
So, is this a big hype bubble? Is it beyond that? Let's take a look at some of the details and actually let's look back in history as well. All right, so will it live up to the hype? You have these large language models that have now become sort of part of our vernacular in the last year or so.
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT, I felt like it was the first one that really kind of hit the scene that started grabbing people's attention, and you started to, you weren't really quite sure what the application of it was going to be for you, but
Yeah,
people started tinkering with it, and that was the first name that was all the buzz,
for
right?
sure.
And then DeepSeek seems to have stolen the news here recently. But yeah, it's obviously very interesting to see how this whole AI ecosystem is evolving and at such a quick pace.
And it is much more than just those large language models,
Yeah,
although those are the things that are coming forefront into the consumer's eyes.
right.
Understandably, right?
Yep.
They're pretty cool. They're pretty amazing. My son and I were looking at this the other day. I think we actually were looking at Costco and we said, boy, with Costco's subscription model, how many people are members,
Right.
and what if they change their price by $5? What does that look like? And we were trying to figure that out, and then AI really helped us out with that search
Oh
in a
yeah.
really quick way.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So it was just really quick, really fast. These are the things that we're all living through, right?
Sure.
But again, how does this affect the bigger picture in the business world?
Right.
This is where we want to shift and go backwards in time a little bit. So this is a really cool slide because it shows you these different mega trends at the top, things like, the personal computing revolution, internet, mobile, cloud computing, and now AI.
Right.
Well, it turns out the initial forecasts, these things were actually significantly lower than the actual benefit.
And at the time, they all seem like outrageous numbers, right? Like the initial forecast of the value of these new different technologies at the time when they were being discussed, it seemed outlandish that things were going to evolve and change and then be worth what they were forecasting. And as it turns out, over a long period of time, that they woefully underestimated the actual value.
I couldn't agree more. So it's hard to remember back to some of these periods in time, but it does seem as though if there's a trend in the business and investing world, it's that the hype machine can get really loud and really fast.
Right.
And so it feels as though sometimes somebody's just pumping air into these balloons and what's going to happen, right?
Right.
But this is really interesting because look, we're outpacing what these forecasts have been. They've actually delivered plus.
Right.
So AI, the question is it going to bust? Is it going to come in less than, equal to, or more?
Right.
Well, history would tell us it'd be more.
Right. Right.
We'll see.
We will see.
We've actually shared something like this along the way before. This has been updated, but it continues to be very relevant when you're trying to dissect and understand the AI space. And what does it look like? What does it really mean?
Yeah.
Because it's way more than those just large language models, right?
Right, absolutely. So that's again we focus on like the Chat GPT to your point earlier, it sort of like grabs the headlines, DeepSeek sort of grabs headlines, but underneath the surface of the headlines there is a much broader ecosystem. And so there's a lot more players involved in that ecosystem that stand to benefit if let's just assume that it meets the current forecast and the value of AI. There are a lot of companies out there that seek to benefit greatly from the advancement of AI and the broadening of that ecosystem. There's a lot more players that are going to be involved and potentially do very well because of the development.
Exactly. So I mean, NVIDIA gets a lot of credit
Yep.
for the AI revolution, if you will. And look, take nothing away from them. They've been fantastic, and the stock has obviously performed really fantastically. But they're just one sector within this tech stack.
Correct.
And then I think what you see to the right here is this industry, this ecosystem that is built around it. You don't have semiconductors without having certain raw materials.
Exactly.
You need to have energy and you need to have infrastructure So people have to build the infrastructure.
Right.
So all of these things are coming together. And then you talk about data centers and how much energy they take and how big those things are becoming. It's amazing how this ecosystem all of a sudden goes from being, oh, it's semiconductors, to all of a sudden it's all of these things.
Right, and you think about any of the trends that we've looked at in the previous slide. You just think about looking back. What were when we've shown a slides like this in the past, but like what were the 10 largest companies in the S&P 500 20 years ago? They're a lot different than the names that you see as the top 10 today. And so, are the top 10 names today still likely to be the top 10 names a decade from now? I don't know. Again, it's similar to the history showing us the way. Would lead you to believe not likely.
It's a very dynamic space, so buckle in, but it does seem to have a lot of really, really good tailwinds behind it.
No doubt.
So this is sort of a headline that's coming out in the marketplace recently, and I think this is important to point out. Old tech, quote unquote, is benefiting from the AI revolution.
I mean, year to date, it's been doing incredibly well. You look at the chart here. I mean, look at IBM. I mean, that's a name that IBM was one of those 10 largest names in the S&P 500. 15, 20 years ago.
Yep.
It's clearly not in the top 10 as we stand here today. But in 2025 thus far, it's off to a heck of a start, up almost 20%.
The broadening of this AI story is going to be the next phase, I think.
Yeah.
And whether these rapid kind of appreciations hold up over the long term,
who knows?
Time will tell.
Right.
But it bodes well for IBM, Cisco, Oracle, these companies that all have a hand in being experts and consultants in the space, helping with software development, sometimes helping with some infrastructure pieces. They're benefiting now, and I think that's an important, it's an important fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and also take into consideration when we talk about valuations, and you think about how these companies have performed, their stock prices have performed over the last decade or so, not as well as the Nvidias of the world,
Yep.
Right? So the point to that is that there's probably a lot more runway for these companies to do well and to benefit from it. Not that the big ones won't continue to do well, but there might be more opportunity for some of the less appreciated names in the last decade.
Well, that's a great point. And does that lead to opportunities within kind of a value lens? We'll see. It certainly tells you that tech is far from the end of the runway.
Correct.
So, yeah, it's interesting. It's exciting. It's going to continuously evolve. We're going to be right here in the cockpit to see it. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be a fun ride.
Outstanding. Thanks for your help today.
Thank you.